Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast, brought to you by Blue Water Climate Control. Be sure and check them out online at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com or check them out on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. With Austin Price, Rob Lewis, Jesse Simonton, I'm Brent Hubbs. Austin, you and I got a chance to spend a couple of days in Atlanta, in the Atlanta, North Georgia area where Tennessee's trying to do some recruiting there. What's your takeaway of Tennessee's presence in that area?
Well, I mean, we got to meet with 8 kids over basically about a 26-hour span, and I thought Tennessee, is in a good spot with, a couple of different guys. I mean, they're battling for, guys like Nyland Green and players like that. But I think depending on what Tennessee wants to do at the tight end position / receiver position, guys like Miles Campbell and Julian Nixon are ones to watch as far as whether Tennessee wants to go hard after them. I think they would have a pretty good shot with both kids. I think Tennessee's in a good spot with Cody Brown. He clearly likes Jay Graham a good bit, and I'm kind of interested to see where they end up with Smile Munden, because I think with Smile, it's no slam dunk that he's going to end up at Tennessee or anything, but I think they are positioned well. The problem is much like Travion Henderson, there's a lot of contenders. I think he likes a lot of schools, and so when he starts to dwindle this thing down, where is Tennessee at for Smile Munden over the next 2, 3, 4 months? It will be kind of interesting to see to me. And then Christian Zachary, the kid at Carrollton, is another one that's kind of been a fast riser. He added Georgia, he added Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Florida State. This has all happened in the last month and a half. Where do things go with his recruitment this spring, and then where does he camp at this summer?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Back to Smile Munden, first of all, is exactly where's he going to play? How are teams going to use him? I think that'll be a factor, in his recruitment. I think the other thing that's interesting in him is he's going to be all about relationships, Austin. I mean, this is a guy who, he was recruited by everybody down in that area to go play. Hey, come to my school. We've got this new facility. We've got this. We've got that. He stayed in the community. I mean, he's playing where he played middle school football, did not want to, he wanted to stay with his friends. So the relationship factor is going to be really important for him, not the glitz and the glamour. And you can tell in talking to him, he's not about glitz and glamour. No, he's not. And, frankly, is a guy that really is super laid back. I saw, one of the comments on the General's Quarters when we posted the video of, didn't really, give a great feeling. I mean, he was laid back at talking about any school. I mean, I don't think there was a school that just wowed him. He's wanting to get back and see several different schools, Auburn, Florida, obviously Tennessee's another, in that, mix as well, for him to get back to campus here soon. But clearly, he is a guy that looks the part. I think he's probably an outside backer. Maybe could place him inside, but I think an outside backer. He runs too well, having played a lot of time at safety at the high school level up until this past season. That you just feel like he's going to be a guy that comes off the edge. Yeah, a guy who's got great speed, runs the jet sweeps for him as a slot receiver, plays some running back for him. He's clearly the best football player on that Paulding High School team, and they use him in a variety of ways. I want to say this, and I think this is important to note, Austin. I mean, we talked to 7 or 8 players down there. What an impressive collection of kids to deal with. Just well-spoken, clearly comfortable with the whole recruiting process. It's amazing how this thing is all getting sped up, and the byproduct of that is these kids are pretty savvy. You know it? Yeah. Newsflash to any sports information director in the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, of any of the schools that these kids could potentially land. Listen to the interviews and tell me those kids can't handle themselves to meet with the media at a Power 5 program. Yeah. I mean, they were super impressive and, all well-spoken, some better than others. And the ones that were, weren't the best were better in the top 90 or top 10% of, kids I've talked to. So, I mean, they were all just, really articulate and really kind of had, you could tell had done some stuff before, but not all of them have done a ton of interviews, and they weren't shied away by doing an on-camera interview. And,
these are guys that I think will benefit programs sooner rather than later when they get to college.
It's interesting. We also we were at 3 different schools that are in the same region, same classification, same region. There's a ton of respect that these coaches have for the guys we talk to. When you talk about a Nyland Green and the respect, the coaches that go against him have in that region for him.
Yeah.
Same for Cody Brown, and same for the youngster. At Grayson that we talked to, everybody that you said, that guy's a really good football player and is going to be a big time guy. And boy, there's some good football in that region. You know what?
Oh, there's a ton of good football in that region. I mean, you're talking about top end programs. Like Grayson, and that's where we talked to Marquise Killebrew or Marquise Groves Killebrew. Obviously Cody Brown at Parkview. They finished in the Final Four this past year. State semifinals, lost to Harrison Bailey. Just so happens that the Groves Killebrew kid at Grayson played on the same 7-on-7 team with Harrison Bailey. He's really tight with Harrison, and I think that's where some interest in Tennessee kind of stems from with him, as far and plus Derek Ansley covets Marquise Groves Killebrew a good bit, and then of course Nyland Green, same thing. They all kind of go against each other in the same region. Parkview is kind of a new entrant to that region this coming year, but they've played against each other in playoffs and stuff. So there's a healthy respect there. The kids know each other. I wouldn't say that if you get one, it gives you a better chance with the other. That's not the case with this group of kids. Atlanta, as big as it is just frankly too spread out. I mean, Green and was really close to Grayson. 40 minutes.
Right.
I mean, I can go down Emory Road and hit about 6 high schools in 10-15 minutes. I mean, Atlanta's just different in that regard. So while the kids know each other through the camp circuit, 7-on-7, it's not like they're best buddies that are like, oh yeah, we're going to play together at the next level.
Yeah, let's go hang out at each other's houses. Oh, it's a 45-minute drive to your house. I mean, it's not close. I think the other thing too, and you find this in recruiting, I don't care where you go, it's just the way it is the interesting the ties that are there. So we go to Centennial High School, and then you find out that the kid's dad play with Coach Pruitt.
Yeah.
So that's a unique tie. You go to Parkview, and the head coach at Parkview plays for Darrell Dickey at Presbyterian, former Vol quarterback Darrell Dickey. We walk into South Paulding High School. That coach has got ties to Alcoa.
He played ball at Maryville College.
And he went to White County, graduated a year ahead or 2 years ahead of Coach Harper on the Lady Vol side. So lots of intertwined things that, not going to be the difference maker for you, but they don't hurt.
They don't hurt. It's just like you go back to the Darnell Wright recruitment. Billy Seals didn't tell Darnell Wright where to go. Not one time. But the fact that Billy was a Tennessee fan kind of cracked the door open for Tennessee to go kick it down. So it was up to Tennessee to land him, but having that little in helps you. Yeah. And so, little things like that, can, prove to be vital. Again, I think, using Charles Davis and of course Mike Keith as well, but really specifically Charles Davis on the signing day coverage when he, voices all the Madden stuff, it resonates with kids and find, oh, that's where that guy went to school. Okay. And then a guy like Cody Brown who's wanting to go into broadcasting. I mean, tell me it's not neat that the nearly 5-star running back, who's basically a top 50 player, goes out and sits out there and announces over the PA the freshman and JV games.
Yeah, that may be the greatest story we picked up, is that because he talked about it. It was interesting. He talked about, he wants to be a sports broadcasting guy, but he also talked about his love for football. And his love for football carries him so much that he's going to go and handle PA for those kids that he announces for, when they do JV and freshman games, which is just, a testament to the young man, in my opinion, because he's that involved in his program and he's that involved in his high school, and he's also working on his craft, something he wants to do down the road. I'm not saying this because Tennessee seems to be in a pretty good spot with him. He may have been the most impressive guy we talked to, and we talked to a lot of really impressive guys.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm interested to see kind of what happens with a guy like Julian Nixon, good-looking kid at Centennial, plays on a team that's not very good at the high school level. But there are some natural ties. Talks to Niedermeyer a ton. That's his lead recruiter. And then of course,
and he might be a tight end in the future.
Yeah, he could grow into a tight end. He's 220. He's a big kid. He's 220. At the high school level, and he's got the frame to put on more.
Yep.
And then of course a guy like Miles Campbell, another talented guy that saw his stock continue to rise. It makes some sense, that Tennessee does their due diligence there. I think if you're Tennessee, you want to see both Campbell and Nixon camp this summer.
I think so.
In my opinion. And I don't mean that they're not. If they wanted to commit right now, I think Tennessee would probably take those guys. But I think you still would like to see them camp, watch them compete with your own two eyes.
Yeah, I think the biggest
see what they how they fit into your your plans.
Yeah, and I think Campbell's a guy whose stock has risen because late in the year last year he was much more physical as a blocker, and I think that's what caught the attention of some people. They looked at him and said, hey, if he's that physical at 215, what's he going to be if he puts on 20 pounds, 25 pounds, he's playing at 245.
Yeah.
I think that's the intrigue there. The other thing that stood out to me, Austin, is the number of times these kids have already been to Tennessee, and all of them that we talked about spoke about coming back to Tennessee quickly, being back this month, being back in April, coming back and seeing the Vols again.
Yeah, Groves Killebrew could be in town this weekend. 7-on-7 teams, I think, planning to be up there, but we all know how that changes. Miles Campbell, another guy that could be back at Tennessee in short order. Nyland Green told us, he's supposed to come up next weekend. So, and of course Cody Brown's going to come up at some point this spring. So, yeah, the best thing for Tennessee is, they had them on campus. Most everybody we talked to, they had them on campus in the month of January, and they're all planning to be back, if not this weekend, next weekend, or at some point this spring.
Well, but now it's not all about Atlanta and North Georgia, where obviously we try to bring you as much as we can there. This weekend is about North Carolina.
Oh, huge weekend!
What an impressive showing that is coming to town from the state of North Carolina. That Jay Graham is getting to town. If they all show up, Austin, I mean, that is a who's who list out of the Tar Heel State.
Well, as big a weekend as it is for Jay Graham, because he's the lead dog on all these North Carolina kids. To me, it's as big a weekend for Jimmy Brumbaugh, because Jay has is getting Javari Ritzie in town, Peyton Page, Travis Shaw, who's a massive defensive lineman for the class of 2022. Obviously Isaac Washington getting back to Knoxville in short order after his commitment, then turn around and decommitment once Tracy Rocker left for South Carolina. So in my opinion, big weekend for Jay Graham. Kudos to him for getting a lot of these kids in, and we're not even talked about Cayman Marley, who's a top 100 player on Rivals, Jalen Wright, whose really stock has risen a ton, the running back from over there in the Durham area, and then of course Kamaro Edwards, a talented running back from over in Havelock. But the defensive linemen are the bell cows. They're the key, this weekend, in my opinion, because you need to show well with Javari Ritzie. Peyton Page obviously has had a ton of momentum headed towards Clemson, but you could stymie that this weekend. And again, Jay's done a phenomenal job of getting him here, and he's the lead recruiter. But the guy they want to talk to is Jimmy Brumbaugh. And this is a big weekend for Brumbaugh, because if he's on point and has a big weekend himself, Tennessee could be very happy with how this weekend turns out.
Yeah, and I think that these guys are going to be in town for a while and going to give Tennessee a chance to spend quite a bit of time with them, and not just a meat market kind of pass through type thing, which we'll see how that all plays out. But that could be important as well. Ty Simpson is going to be around.
Coming in as well on Friday, and that's the big thing you mentioned just now with those kids. The Page, Ritzie, all those kids, or a good portion of the kids from North Carolina, not all of them, but a portion of them coming in for not only just Saturday but Friday, and not leaving until Sunday. So that's big. And you're right, Ty Simpson slated to come in and spend a good amount of time with Chris Winkie and Jim Chaney starting later today. And so Tennessee with a big recruiting weekend, and they need to take advantage of this weekend, because you're getting all these guys to campus, and I think in a perfect way, you'd love to be able to have probably a smaller number and be able to spend time more individual time with these guys. But you can't turn them away when they're all willing to come. You say, come on.
Big weekend for Tennessee. Plenty of recruiting coverage from our trip to Atlanta. Plenty of recruiting coverage coming up all weekend long from Tennessee's visitors on campus this weekend for the first of many weekends of unofficial visitors on campus throughout the spring. Hey, let me tell you a little bit about Blue Water Climate Control. So you made the investment into an HVAC system. Now keep it running with Blue Water Climate Control Smooth Sailing Service Plan. Blue Water offers their clients seasonal inspections, repair discounts, and annual tune-ups for one low annual price or low automatic monthly payments. The Smooth Sailing Service Plan includes semi-annual seasonal inspections to perform routine checks, 10% off parts and labor on all HVAC repairs, an annual 40-point diagnostic of your entire heating and air system, including ductwork, prioritize response to air conditioning repair and maintenance needs, never pay overtime fees for those weekend and after-hour emergencies, a loyalty plan. You can accrue $100 a year towards a replacement heating and air system with the Smooth Sailing Service Plan. You can call them today and they'll give you a quote over the phone. Don't forget to mention Volquest to get a discount. So check out Blue Water Climate Control at 865-299-2290. Follow them on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate, or of course check them out online at BlueWaterClimateControl.com. Speaking of blue waters, Tennessee looked dead in the water, Rob Lewis. A week or so ago, here's Tennessee. They were not uncompetitive, but they blow the lead to Auburn. Then they nearly blow a lead to Florida. And then they go to Kentucky and they rally for the win and put themselves at least back into somewhat of a postseason conversation. I know you've said on multiple occasions you're shocked you hadn't seen anything like that. It's been a few days past now since the Kentucky win. Where do you put it kind of in perspective with things that you've seen at Tennessee?
I honestly don't think I've ever seen anything other than, the only thing that comes close to me would be the Hail Mary at Georgia. But that was just one play. I guess if you toss in the fact that Georgia scored kind of dramatically, in the final minute, it's more of a sequence of plays. But the venue, the fact that it was against a good Kentucky team, number 6 in the country, and just being in that building, all the momentum was on Kentucky's side. Rupp was rocking. They'd come out and made a 10-point halftime lead, a 17-point lead, just in the matter of a couple of minutes. It just, me and you were texting while it was happening. Man, they're going to get beat by 30. And
that was what it felt like at 19, right?
Totally.
Just on TV watching it, you're like, they're not going to get any stops.
And being inside the building was even, it was just, you've been in college basketball arenas. It's so much about momentum and who has juice and just, Kentucky had it all going, and I never saw it coming. It's really the most impressive thing I think I've seen from the Tennessee team, football, basketball, whatever.
Looking at some of the stats, Jesse, you're a basketball guy. You certainly played the game, know the game, follow Tennessee. I don't think I've ever seen these two stats in a game. Kentucky had 20 points off of 8 Tennessee turnovers in the first half. Who goes perfect on turnover conversions? Kentucky did in the first half. Then to flip the script, in the last 7 minutes, Tennessee turned the basketball over twice. And if I'm not mistaken, every other time they had the basketball in the last 7 minutes, they scored points. They either made a shot, or they got an offensive rebound put back, or they got fouled and got to the free throw line. The yin and yang of two halves of basketball, where Kentucky had over half their points in the first half are off turnovers, and then Tennessee's almost flawless the last 7 minutes of a basketball game on the road.
Yeah, in one of the most storied buildings in America. I think that is a microcosm of an individual's season as a whole. Josiah James people were freaking out about Josiah, right, Rob, for about 6 weeks?
Sure.
And then the last 2 games, specifically what he did, incredible. No one saw that coming.
He was the best player on the floor in the second half at Kentucky the other night, and I don't think it was particularly close. He had 16 points all in the second half, 5 rebounds.
And again, I'm just saying that's a microcosm of the flip of kind of what you're saying, but just from an individual perspective.
Didn't score a bucket until there was 6 minutes left in the game.
Right, and he didn't have an assist until the last couple minutes of the game too.
Non-factor.
Right. I mean,
but his parents seem to be the good luck charm,
No
so they're going to keep bringing them around.
so how does a guy? And I'm not asking for specifics about Josiah James, but you don't see this very often in sports, just in general. How does a guy figure it out? And I hate the phrase, the light bulb comes on, because that makes it act like the guy was not even, you know what I'm saying, like he wasn't necessarily trying or he's not very smart or whatever. But how does a guy go from 6 turnovers at Auburn, where you couldn't let him bring the ball up the floor, to being the best player on the court for a long stretch, if not the entire second half at Rupp Arena in a visiting uniform? How does that happen?
It's strange, and I know Rob will, that there's been scuttle about injuries or what, but that does not explain the mental aspect of why, again, Josiah literally could not be trusted to bring the ball 40 feet across the halfway line, and yet on a court full of future pros, whether NBA or over in Europe. I mean, he was, whether it was Quickly or whoever, I mean, he was getting buckets on them.
So how does it happen, Rob?
I don't know, man. I mean, Rick says a lot of it is health, but how much healthier do you think he was last Saturday against Florida than he was Tuesday against Arkansas? I mean, I don't think that explains all of it.
I mean, it's not like he's sitting on the shelf and resting all week long.
No.
He's practicing and he's playing crazy amount of minutes. I mean,
Played 40 against Florida.
yeah, I don't know that I've seen anything like that. I mean, you talk about, winning in a rally at Rupp and not seeing anything like that, or can't recall things like that. And I don't know that I've seen a player in a week's time be as vastly different as he's been. And I'm not knocking the kid. I mean, I think it's a total credit to the kid. And, he obviously was not as bad as he was playing at the time. But to go from being, a guy everybody was talking about how big of a disappointment, including me, how big of a disappointment he was coming out of the Auburn deal, 7 days later he plays 40 minutes at Florida and was a huge part in that win. And then 72 hours after that, something like that, he goes to Rupp Arena and does what he does. I can't recall a player flipping it like that or it changing like that in a week's period, in a week's time. To me, it's one of the craziest, and this has been a crazy season with this team, but it's one of the craziest things I can recall watching and seeing with anybody, not just with Tennessee, but with anybody around the country, that it just, poof, happens.
Yeah, and depending on how this season, plays out, I mean, there's going to be some interesting stories probably told behind the scenes. I think you're already seeing some of those with kind of the lore of Fulky happen, where I know they're saying now that, Grant Williams and whoever told him 2 years ago that you're better than all of us. Maybe. But it is pretty damn impressive what he's done this season, specifically over the last month carrying this team.
I never thought that we would live in a world where John Fulkerson went to Rupp Arena and scored 27 points.
I didn't know if we'd live in a world where John Fulkerson would score 27 points in a conference game.
No, I promise you, I would have jerked somebody's arm off if they wanted to make that bet with me 3 years ago. No, I've never been. I mean, I've always.
Not that he was terrible, but he wasn't going to be the offensive catalyst.
He was a serviceable college basketball player, but now, the light or whatever, metaphor folks want to use, he has tapped into a skill set that works, and you talk about getting buckets. I mean, he is the number one option for Tennessee right now, and the offense goes kind of as he goes.
What was the better play from Fulkerson on Tuesday night? The kind of 15-foot fall away on the baseline, or the fact that he sized up a guy and drove down the middle of the paint from the top of the key, spin move. He didn't make the layup, but he aggressively attacked the basket off the dribble. Which one of those two plays was more impressive?
The step back jump on the baseline caught me way off guard. Way off guard. I'm blown away by how much better the kid is.
Well, and it's a credit to the kid. I mean, look, Rick Barnes and his staff deserves credit for player development. We've talked about player development, how key that is. But give this kid some credit for building his toolbox as the season has gone along. I mean, he made plays Tuesday night. He wasn't either comfortable making or wasn't going to try to make or couldn't make the 1st of January.
Yeah.
And he's making them. I mean, he's dictating where he gets the ball at. where he's posting up, he's pushing defenders, not pushing them around, but he's dictating his space on the floor, which is something he wasn't doing earlier in the year.
I know we talked last week, I think on the TV show about all SEC, and I told you I didn't think John would make it because of Reggie Perry and Nick Richards. Oh, my vote changed Tuesday night for sure.
Now this one's going to be interesting on Saturday because don't you think Auburn's going to double hard? Because I was surprised Kentucky in the second half did not double Fulkerson hard immediately as soon as he touched the ball.
Yes.
I was really surprised. I mean, given the fact that what Fulkerson had done to them in the first half, I thought for sure Calipari's first defensive adjustment was we're gonna squeeze and double hard. Don't you think Auburn doubles hard?
Especially when Vescovi and some other guys were not hitting shots.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because Tennessee's not a great 3-point shooting team. If Bowden hasn't clicked, and then that's one thing. But on the year, they have not been a great 3-point shooting team.
But don't you think Auburn will double?
Yes, 100%.
And so I think that'll be because everybody's going to assume because he had a big night at Rupp, another big night's coming or a big afternoon is coming against Auburn. I think Auburn's plan against him will be very different than Kentucky's plan because Kentucky just kind of looked at him and said, "We'll just play you one-on-one," and he took him to school. I don't think Auburn's going to allow that to happen. What's going on with the Tigers? What's up with Auburn, Rob?
I don't know, man.
I know that they haven't been healthy, but they're fading.
They got Okoro back now, and Bruce's teams kind of did that here, several years. But so I don't know if it's something about the way he manages kids, but I was kind of stunned by that Texas A&M loss. That was he did not see that coming, and I think Buzz Williams.
He's the coach of the year in this conference.
I think so.
I mean, no offense to John Calipari, and I'm not saying this because Kentucky lost Tuesday night and blew a lead at home against Tennessee. I don't think you lose that award based on one game or anything like that. But Buzz Williams inherited a mess at A&M and not a lot of talent. And what they've put together, to me, what he's done this year and in year one establishing himself and being significantly better than anybody thought to be. I think he's the coach of the year in the conference.
I think people better look out too because he's a Texas guy. He came up in Texas. He's going to get some players there. It's I'd keep an eye out for Buzz Williams.
Yeah, he's done a really good job. And, Texas is going to be interesting because he's getting established, and I guess Shaka Smart's going to keep his job, given the way they're playing down the stretch right here now. That conversation.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago it seemed like it was going to be Beeline going back in there, and
but it looks like it may not be that way right now with the way Texas has played down the stretch. All right, let's get back to Tennessee and Auburn on Saturday. What's key to this thing tomorrow?
If you go back to the last game, it's just the turnovers. Tennessee had 24 at Auburn. Take care of the ball. It's like we talked about the Kentucky game. Once Tennessee stopped giving possessions away in the second half, it totally flipped things around. So that's an obvious one. That's certainly no X and O genius stuff, but that cannot give Auburn extra possessions.
How does Tennessee handle Auburn's high ball screen offense? That I think Auburn's going to. Aren't they going to live in that? Because that's what they did in the comeback. I think they ran high ball screen for the last 5 possessions.
I think Kentucky has better guards than Auburn. Overall, I don't think they have anybody maybe as good as Okoro, but the three of them combined are better. And I think you see them handle it the way they did against Kentucky, where they did a really good job of keeping guys in front of them. Maybe you don't switch as much this time around. I know Rick oftentimes, depending on his lineup, likes to switch 1 through 5, but that's we've seen that be problematic at times. I think they're going to go with Vescovi. He's going to have to hold up. They're going to Dowdy is probably going to be the guy that who's the little kid, not McLemore. Name escapes me, but Vescovi's going to have to hold up. I think because I do think what you're saying. Bruce will try to get them in high ball screens up the top of the key, and because they're not a good. It goes against what you normally picture them as, but they're not a good 3-point shooting team this year. I think they're worse in the league.
But they've never seen one they didn't like.
No, they'll still jack it up.
They're going to shoot 30 of those.
They're right around 30%, so it's not the same.
Well, Rick Barnes said it told you, I guess, after the Kentucky game, his team's not dead yet. Thompson-Boling Arena will not be dead at noon tomorrow. It should be a big-time atmosphere and a big opportunity for this team to continue to put themselves in the conversation. We were talking about this before the podcast started. Got to win tomorrow and then probably 2 in the tournament.
Yeah, I think Rob has kind of outlined it best that you think, all right, 3 straight wins, Florida, Auburn, Kentucky, or Florida, Kentucky, Auburn. That's impressive. Then even if you just win the first game in Nashville, that's one of the worst. You're beating one of the worst teams in the SEC. So I think you got to have another quality dub to kind of really put yourself in that mix for Dayton or kind of that like 11-12 seed.
One of the last 4.
If you win on Friday, right now Tennessee would be the 8th seed as I see it. They're tied with Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a tiebreaker, so that would put them on Thursday. A lot could change this weekend. I mean, it's kind of a logjam in the middle there, but it would. If it started right now, Tennessee would play Alabama on Thursday, the 9 seed. Which I mean, I don't know that helps you if you get that one, but you win that one as the 8 seed. You're catching Kentucky again on Friday.
Yeah. So plenty. I mean, not dead, but not in. Plenty of work.
I don't think so.
Plenty of work to be done. You think this league's going to get 5 regardless?
I do not, personally.
I mean, are they going to, because it's a Power 5 deal?
Hey, no,
are they going to get? Are they going to
get? If Mississippi State takes care of it, they play Ole Miss this weekend.
Should win that one.
They win that one. That gets them to 20 wins. They finish 11-7 in the league, and then they'll play somebody they should handle on Friday in the SEC tournament. I mean, 21 wins.
Ken Palm, Jerry Palm, Lenardi, they're going to have their work cut out from the next 2 weeks. I think this is going to be a tough year in terms of predictions, in terms of, who – there's going to be, I think, some real arguments about who actually deserves to be, in those top 4 seeds. I mean, you got, San Diego State sounds like they don't even want to be, they'd rather be number 2 in the West instead of 1 in the East, or,
right.
So
Oh, you'd rather be. I mean,
100%.
Because they're gonna put Duke as a 3 seed, in the East. Stick them in, great. I don't even know where the Sacks are. Greensboro.
I'm sure it's
Tennessee,
Greensboro or Philly or
somewhere
or New York.
where the 1 seed in that bracket's gonna be like thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough.
I do
kind of
too.
predict in terms of like can the SEC get 5? I think we talked about it a week or 2 ago. This one would surmise that this will be a good year for some mid-majors to squeak in, some extra mid-majors, but that may not be the case because it depends on kind of how their resumes unfold, what happens with a team like ETSU if they lose in their conference tournament before instead of just getting the automatic bid. So.
Yeah, and I mean they seem to be one of the few exceptions that could be a potential at-large, mid-major, if you will, potential team, because it's been as chaotic in the mid-major ranks, in a lot of ways as it's been in the big, in the Power 5 deals too. So I'm with you. I think not just, I think seeding and just who gets in is going to be hard to determine. There's going to be a lot of guessing, a lot of speculating, a lot of breaking down of numbers that people are going to go, huh? Now, and at some point in time, it becomes an eye test deal.
It does, and I would say from Tennessee's perspective, they need as many of these high-powered mid-majors to go ahead and lock up their spots by winning their
don't get a lot of surprises there.
They need the Creightons and those guys to go ahead that are going to get in the tournament anyways, that if they don't win that spot, you're seeding one of your few spots, in terms of being one of the last 4 or 8 in.
All right, for Tennessee, it starts on Saturday. If they don't beat Auburn tomorrow, it's an irrelevant conversation.
Unless they win it.
Unless they go win the conference tournament. But
I think.
If you don't beat Auburn, I don't think you're a factor unless you win the thing.
That is my perspective.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Maybe it's interesting if you get to Sunday in the championship game, perhaps, but you've got to be playing on Sunday if you don't beat Auburn on Saturday.
If they get to Sunday, they will have picked up 2 high-quality wins.
Right.
In Nashville.
But I think tomorrow is very important for this team. We'll see if they can get it done against the Auburn Tigers. All right, next week, spring football is going to start. Jesse, you have had plenty of stuff in the spring primer when you look at 5 players to keep an eye on. It's a big spring for them. We'll have the defensive one coming out here in a couple of days as well. As this team rolls into spring practice, Rob, jump in here as well. As they roll into spring practice, biggest storyline for you, not a prediction, biggest storyline for you outside of quarterbacks. So quarterbacks is a given, all right?
Okay.
I got to take that one off the table because everybody's going to say that. Let's just do it this way, biggest defensive storyline for you.
I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I mean, inside linebacker, you know, what happens there? Does J.J. Peterson sees what's going to be, you know, just an absolutely golden opportunity? And, you know, what happens at safety? Who steps up and, you know, is Flowers ready to, you know, step up and kind of fill the void left by Nigel?
Biggest defensive storyline for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually linebacker as a whole. I think it's both in and outside, and I think part of that is just because of the unknowns with where Kravaris is going to land in the fall and where even some of the Whitehaven kids are going to land in the fall. I think there's some uncertainty about positionally where they're going to play. So whether it's J.J. Peterson at inside linebacker, there's no natural heir apparent for Daniel Batuli, you know, who's going to be paired with Toa. But, I mean, is Aaron Beasley going to be that guy? I don't think so. Solon Page has been in the program a long time. Don't see that. So I think JJ is at least going to get the opportunity to prove to Pruitt, you know, who, you know, as I put in the piece, you know, very positively exclaimed 2 years ago that Peterson was who was the highest rated signee of Pruitt's inaugural class, that he was this 4x4 linebacker that could play all four downs. And we just haven't seen, you know, for all four positions, we just haven't seen that. But he's going to get, based on sheer opportunity this spring, because there's not a lot of bodies at inside linebacker, a chance to play with the other quote-unquote starters on defense. I think safety's interesting, mainly because I think it's going to be kind of about development for Flowers. He's on my list of the five guys. I think it's a huge spring for Roman Harrison. I really do. You know, again, there's just not a lot of options at outside linebacker. And Roman is not a prototypical outside linebacker in terms of length, in terms of kind of you know, Jeremy likes to talk about these traits that they have for various positions. Roman doesn't really fit that. Now, he's a physical specimen. He's kind of a freak. You know, this is a guy that was playing defensive tackle in high school and blocking kicks and what have you. But you kind of saw that they were a bit unsure how to use him last year. He did come on a little bit late in a situational role, had a sack each against Vandy in Indiana. But they need him to be more than just a situational guy, or they need somebody else. And it can't, whether it's him, DeAndre Johnson, those are the two most likely candidates that are on campus in the spring. But that's a lot of snaps they have to fill for DeAndre Johnson and Kayvon Bennett, because even if you just assume, you know, hypothetically, that Bennett takes every single one of DeAndre Johnson's Darrell Taylor's snaps, excuse me. Kayvon Bennett played a lot last year too, opposite DT. And so the Vols need somebody to step up there.
Yeah, you know, I think the storyline for me, I'm going to go a little bit different direction. I think it's how the front seven, how their communication and how the adjustment is to three new coaches up there.
Oh, and that's
your entire front seven is and look, and I know Derek Ansley knows them, and Brian Niedermeyer's been on the staff, and he knows Jeremy Pruitt, but Shelton Felton's new. Jimmy Brumbaugh has not worked.
Yeah, how does that become a cohesive group?
Right. How does that work? Because I was looking at this and put it in the war room. I mean, this is the first spring in 4 years that the offense is not learning a new offense, which is pretty crazy to think about. They ought to be ahead. They ought to go fast offensively, because Jay Graham knows Jim Chaney's system. He coached in it before. Asavet knows it as a you know, an analyst and what he's been involved with. They should be seamless on that side of the ball. Now, so it's about players. On the defensive side of the ball, how do they adjust with three new guys up there up front, which is something they haven't done. A year ago, defense should have been ahead because they brought everybody back. It's year two in the system. Everything's moving faster. How does the defensive line respond to Brumbaugh? How do those outside backers respond to Shelton Felton? Same for the inside backers with Brian Niedermeyer. So I think that's I don't know that you can look at that and say, boy, that's a win, or, you know, but I think that's an intriguing storyline over 15 days to see how far that front seven comes and how cohesive they become with those stats.
And this isn't something we would know until the fall, because the coaches aren't going to tip their hand, and B, you can't really know it until you see it in a true game, maybe 2 games, 3 games. But, you know, what does the rotation look like at defensive line? Last year they played everybody.
The year before they did not.
And last year they played out of everybody, I was going to say both maybe out of necessity, but also because, as Jeremy said multiple times throughout the season, all the guys were pretty similar. They didn't have a dude. There wasn't a game changer up there. Aubrey Solomon was pretty good. Matthew Butler was pretty good, but nobody was like a guy that demanded X amount of snaps. And so does that continue this year? What happens with the insertion of Emmett Gooden, bringing him back into the mix? Another one of my guys, is kind of a teaser. I think it's a big spring for Elijah Simmons because, does he kind of get above the line where he now enters that rotation? Only played 12 snaps last year, 4 huge snaps in the goal line stand at Kentucky, but that was really, all he did. If he can't crack his way into the rotation, he's going to be on the scout team again. And perhaps that speaks volumes about the rest of Tennessee's defensive line, or maybe it just says they're kind of just the same, and he's not ready to be a dude yet either. So just lots of variables, I think, can play with that group.
Yeah, I think so, because, the notion is everybody's back, which is great. But where's the separation on who everybody is? Because as you mentioned, last year, to borrow the old Derek Dooley line, they were a sack of potatoes, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but they were pretty interchangeable because they were all kind of the same kind of guy. And it was gap control, don't worry about going and making a bunch of plays. There were some plays that were made, but it was much more about freeing Daniel Petulli up to go make a play or Henry T to go make a play. I think in any conversation we've had with Jeremy Pruitt, he wants more activity out of his defensive line, not just pluggers and gap control guys. Who separates themselves and becomes a playmaker? Does anybody do that? Will be interesting to watch out of that group. So Tennessee goes to the practice field on Tuesday, and they'll practice Tuesday, Thursday. Then they take the week off for spring break, and then they'll come back and get into a regular schedule and a regular rotation, if you will, with this football team. And of course, everybody wants to see what the quarterbacks look like and how that goes, and D'Angelo Gibbs. For a team that's bringing a lot back, Rob, there's a lot of intrigue and a lot of question, as there is with everybody, I guess, around the country. But there are plenty of questions surrounding this team personnel-wise to kind of keep an eye on over the next 15 practices.
Yeah, we talked about defense, and we've certainly covered this subject a lot, but offensively, wide receiver, huge questions. I think Ramel Keaton, does he step up? D'Angelo Gibbs, does he? What's he bringing to the table after kind of disappearing for a couple of years after being such a big time recruit? And is Palmer ready to step up and be the guy? Do you get anything from well, I guess we can find out about a freshman in spring practice, but I think it's a huge opportunity for Keaton and Gibbs.
Yeah, I think it's for Gibbs. It's a big time chance. He's going to get as many reps as his body can handle with those guys. And then, as Jesse pointed out, for a guy like Darnell Wright, huge spring there. What are they going to do at left tackle? We've talked about it. Lots of questions. There'll be lots to discuss, lots to talk about. Starting next week, we won't find out a lot the first week because there'll be some acclimation and jumping in that way. And then after spring break, you'll start to get a little better sense of things when they get into some scrimmage settings and get a better feel that way. So that starts on Tuesday. Of course, the basketball team with a huge opportunity at noon tomorrow against Auburn. And Jesse, Austin and I talked about it at the start of the podcast as we did that portion of the podcast, rolling back in from Atlanta, and talked about some of those guys we saw. In addition to what's guys coming in this weekend, it's a pretty impressive list of guys that Tennessee has coming in this weekend, both in the 21 class, and I think getting Ty Simpson here is huge to get him back on campus. But a lot of these North Carolina guys are going to be in for multiple days. It's not just going to be will in for a few hours and leave. This is a big weekend, big opportunity for Tennessee.
Yeah, I think both Jay Graham with North Carolina guys and Asavet and Winky and Niedermeyer a little bit with some of these Philly guys. They're bringing in 2 groups from each of those areas of the country, and that they seem to be the biggest collection of prospects coming on campus. Getting Peyton Page back here is obviously he's the headliner, just because I think Tennessee's kind of chasing Clemson and North Carolina a little bit. Jimmy Brumbaugh gets a chance to kind of get some face time with one of the blue chippers. Getting Ritzy on campus after he's been to Georgia multiple times. Can you kind of stem some of the Bulldogs' momentum there? The AP's noted this on the podcast. We've kind of talked about it in various chats or other platforms. I think Jalen Wright's a guy that this staff really covets as kind of the toy, whatever they want to call it, playmaker. Can play some running back, some Isaiah McKenzie type of dude. and Tennessee likes him a lot. He'll be on campus. I think Caden Marley's not going to make it, which he's a top 100 kid, another North Carolina guy. I think they hope to reschedule that. Be curious about if Miles Campbell, I know y'all visited with him, if he comes into town, where does he kind of sit on that tight end hierarchy? We've talked about, the guy that Tennessee likes in Alabama. You're right, though, getting Ty Simpson here, getting Page's buddy, the 2022, one of the top 2022 defensive linemen in the class on campus. I think that's huge. Let's see if Nolan Rucci comes in. I know he's talked about going to Clemson, but it's a big group. And I'd say lastly, Isaac Washington, we talked about that on Monday, the fact that, he decommitted from Tennessee after the Tracy Rocker deal, then had a story with Adam Friedman where he named Auburn and some other schools as kind of his top contenders. Tennessee was not listed among that group, and yet the Vols have continued to kind of maintain that dialogue and maintain that relationship with he and his family. So to get him back on campus and kind of meeting Jimmy, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, big weekend for Jimmy Brumbaugh. Got a lot of defensive linemen in for just a chance for him to start to get established, because being out in Colorado, he wasn't talking to a lot of these kids because they weren't recruiting in those circles. So starting afresh with those guys, FaceTime with him will be big this weekend. We'll have all the coverage that we can provide for you on kids' visits after their visit concludes here, and get an idea of kind of how things went. Don't know that Tennessee's going to make any news in terms of commitments or anything like that this weekend. I don't expect that. But obviously this is a big
Not for
weekend.
many of the big timers.
Yeah.
You never know about,
Right.
somebody else
Somebody
that kind of
else.
gets the feels.
But not those big names that
No.
we've been talking about. But it is a big opportunity with those big names. So we'll continue to cover all that for you, cover basketball as well, some baseball coverage. Plenty of that going on at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest Podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Friday, everybody.